This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. At the break of dawn on July 21, 1865, a stagecoach rumbled out of Virginia City, Montana Territory, heading toward Idaho with 7 passengers and $86,000 in gold bullion and dust aboard. This stage, bound for San Francisco, would soon become the scene of one of the bloodiest robberies and richest bandit hauls in the history of the Wild West. For most of the passengers, it would be their final journey, while for all but one of the outlaws, it marked the end of their criminal road. By the time it was over, the gold would vanish, becoming yet another lost treasure legend of the Old West. Charlie Parks, a 35-year-old tobacco-chewing bullwhacker from Kansas, was the driver of the ill-fated coach. Parks, who had worked for Overland for years, was known as a reliable hand. Among the passengers were James B. Brown, a saloon keeper from Virginia City, heading to Salt Lake City for medical treatment; Jess Harper, a Confederate veteran on his way to Sacramento to reunite with his family; Sam Martin, a gambler carrying a gun and gold, bound for a Nevada mining camp; L.F. Carpenter, a tall, frail man with a ticket to San Francisco; and a Mormon couple, Mr. and Mrs. Andy Ditmar, returning to Utah after a trip to Bannock. However, one passenger was not who he seemed. Fred Williams, a quiet and unassuming man, was the inside man for the outlaw gang. Williams had secretly gathered information about the large gold shipment and was prepared to signal his accomplices when the stagecoach reached Sod House Station near Fort Hall. The other 3 bandits, Brocky Jack, Big Dave Opdyke, and Willie Whitmore, were camped along the Ross Fork, just a few miles away, waiting for Williams' word. Brocky Jack, the mild-mannered yet dangerous leader of the group, was a seasoned outlaw. Big Dave Opdyke, a former Idaho sheriff recently recalled for misconduct, had connections that proved useful. Willie Whitmore, quick-tempered and trigger-happy, had already left his mark on the territory's graveyards. The 4 bandits had joined forces in Boise City in May of 1865, aiming to make their fortunes along the unguarded stagecoach routes. After a narrow escape from the law, including a reported drowning that Brocky Jack was happy to let the rumor mill spread, the group decided it was time to move on. With the Boise City Vigilance Committee cracking down on lawlessness, the outlaws knew they needed to act fast. By the end of May, the quartet left Boise City, heading east toward Idaho. On the road, they plotted the Portneuf Canyon robbery. They set up camp near the Sod House Station, where Williams was dispatched to Virginia City to gather intel on the gold shipments. Meanwhile, Brocky Jack and the others scouted the stage route, eventually finding the perfect spot for an ambush a few miles south of what is now Pocatello, Idaho. In a narrow canyon filled with willows and brush, where the road wound alongside the shallow Portneuf River, Brocky Jack, the 26-year-old leader, decided, this is the place. Brocky Jack, Opdyke, and Willie Whitmore meticulously reviewed their plans for the holdup. They gathered large boulders and stacked them out of sight, ready to block the road. Willie Whitmore, a crack shot armed with a new repeating Henry rifle, was tasked with shooting the lead horses if the stage driver refused to stop. Once all the details of the robbery were worked out, the 3 bandits returned to their camp at Ross Fork, near Sod House Station, where they waited for word. On the first day out, the stagecoach crossed the Ruby Mountains and reached Corral Station, near what is now Dillon, Montana. The route continued to Pocatello, Idaho, by the Union Pacific Railroad. By the evening of July 25, 1865, the 4th day of travel, the stagecoach arrived at Sod House Station near Fort Hall. After dinner, Fred Williams quietly slipped out and headed to the outlaws' camp. He arrived after dark, bringing news that exceeded their expectations. "There are 2 strong boxes on the stage," he said, "and there's so much gold in them they could hardly be lifted during the overnight stops." The bandits were ecstatic. They whooped with joy, passed around a bottle of booze, and updated Williams on the robbery plans. He then returned to Sod House Station before anyone noticed his absence. July 26, 1865, the day of the robbery, dawned as a perfect summer day. The hot July sun beat down on the narrow canyon, the faint hum of insects filling the air. A lark song echoed down the canyon as the three masked men crouched in the willows, nervously waiting. In the distance, they heard the sounds of snorting horses, jangling trace chains, and the clattering of iron-tired wheels on stones. The horses came into view, slowed at the stream, and then the coach dipped down the incline, crossed the stream, and climbed the bank, making a sharp turn before coming to a sudden stop at the rock barrier across the road. Sam Martin, one of the passengers, poked his head out of the coach door but quickly ducked back inside. A shot rang out, and Martin's aim was accurate, unfortunately. His bullet grazed Whitmore's left hand, taking off the tip of his index finger. Whitmore shouted, "It's a trap!" and chaos erupted. In desperation, the driver, Parks, tried to swing the horses sharply to the left, aiming to break through the willows exactly where Procky Jack was concealed. Jack rose from his hiding spot and, with cool precision, fired his double-barreled shotgun, killing the two lead horses with a shot to each of their heads. Some of the buckshot hit Parks, with one pellet striking just below his left eye and another in his neck. Parks wisely jumped from the coach and took off running. The loss of his finger drove Whitmore into a rage. He opened fire on the coach with his rifle, blasting shot after shot through the thin side panels. Two passengers, Brown and Williams, scrambled out and fled into the brush, while the deadly rifle fire forced the others back inside. Procky Jack ran over, wrested the rifle from the crazed Whitmore's hands, and the shooting abruptly ceased. Jack ordered Opdyke and Whitmore to cover him as he approached the coach. "Come out with your hands up or we'll blow you out," he shouted. Silence greeted his command. Jack yanked open the door. "My God, they're all dead," he exclaimed. At that moment, attention turned to Williams, who staggered out of the brush, his arm shattered. Without a word, he sat down near the coach. Ignoring him, the others quickly set to work looting the stagecoach. Procky Jack and Whitmore rolled the two heavy strongboxes out of the boot and let them crash to the ground. Whitmore used the emergency axe carried on the coach to smash open the treasure chests. Inside, they found 15 glistening bars of gold, each stamped with Montana Assayers and Retort, 360 Oz. Two large leather pouches filled with dust and nuggets added to their incredible haul. Whitmore added several more pounds of gold dust and nuggets that he had taken from the passenger compartment. Jack quickly estimated that their haul amounted to over 460 troy pounds of gold, which they would split 4 ways. As they made their way out of the canyon, the gold-laden bandits nearly rode right over Parks, who was hiding in the brush. Once the outlaws were out of sight, Parks hurried back to the stagecoach, where he found Brown already there, struggling to pull Carpenter from beneath the bodies. Parks, badly wounded, could offer little help. Tragically, the others in the coach, Mr. and Mrs. Andy Ditmar, Jess Harper, and Sam Martin, were all dead. Brown cut loose the dead horses and made Parks and Carpenter as comfortable as possible. Late that afternoon, he reached the Miller Ranch station with the riddled stagecoach, carrying the dead and the wounded. News of the brutal crime and senseless slaughter spread quickly, stirring up the vigilance committees of the West like never before. The boldness and defiance of the robbery infuriated the committeemen, who were ready to hang every bandit involved. The bandits were quickly identified. Parks had seen Procky Jack and Opdyke as they rode past his hiding place, recognizing them immediately. Brown positively identified Fred Williams and Willie Whitmore. The insurance company offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of the stolen bullion, and the hunt for the outlaws was on. Willie Whitmore was the first of the bandits to meet his end. Arizona lawmen gunned him down while he resisted arrest during a drunken brawl. Less than a week later, Fred Williams met a similar fate, hanged from a strong branch of a Colorado tree by the Colorado Vigilance Committee. David Opdyke managed to evade capture a bit longer. After hiding his share of the loot, he headed along the Snake River toward Boise City. Near Glenn's Ferry, he traded his saddle horse and $300 for a team and wagon. On August 17th, Opdyke, now disguised with a heavy beard, arrived in Boise late at night. He tied his team in a dark alley near the home of a dear friend, Ruth, who slipped out under the pretext of borrowing coffee from a neighbor but instead betrayed him for the $10,000 reward. At daybreak, a tired and half-asleep Opdyke left Ruth's house and headed to the alley where his team was tied. 4 men, hidden behind his wagon, jumped out and overpowered him. Before he knew what was happening, he was hogtied, tossed into a wagon and hauled out of town. Just a few miles out of Boise near Syrup Creek, the committeemen stopped and prepared for their grim task. They unhitched the team, propped up the wagon tongue with a short timber, and retied Opdyke's hands and feet. They set him on one of the horses, led him under the makeshift gallows, and placed a noose around his neck, tying it to the end of the wagon tongue. According to a district court recorder who was present, Opdyke refused to utter a single word. The horse was let out from under him, and Opdyke was hanged. Brocky Jack remains the mystery man of the Portneuf Canyon robbery. His fate was never fully determined. Some believe his body was found in the Columbia River, while others claim he was seen in various places in the years that followed. Some historians speculate that Brocky Jack may have ridden with Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch, while others think he was the man killed in a poker game in Lordsburg, New Mexico, in 1878. As for the gold bullion from the Portneuf Canyon robbery, its whereabouts remain a mystery. Perhaps one day, some lucky individual will stumble upon a fortune in glittering gold hidden in Portneuf Canyon. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.